All right, everyone, let's talk about all of the books that I read in July. So first off, I read 10 books. 2 of them were on my Kindle, 3 of them were an audiobook, and then 7 were physical. So let's talk about it. So the first book that I finished this month was The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This is the second in a interconnected standalone series, the first being The Soulmate Equation. And this follows the best friend from the first book, The Soulmate Equation. This is Fizzy's book, and she is a mid-30s woman who is a romance author and is very excited about love, excited about life, but she has kind of lost it over the past 6 months to a year. So she is proposed to go on this dating show, essentially The Bachelor for her, but it ties into the DNA duo that we learn about in the first book, and that is essentially basing compatibility based off of somebody's DNA. So she decides to go on this show to hopefully re-spark her interest in romance. This book is so good. I think that the Soulmate Equation and the True Love Experiment are criminally underrated Christina Lauren books. They are, I think, just more mature because they follow mid-30s women who have other priorities in life instead of just the romance. In the first book, we have a kid. In this book, it's more about her career and how she's had to take a break from her writing because she just isn't that in love with love anymore. And I think that it's very, very interesting. There are definitely a lot of good conversations. The conflicts are very believable, so when they are able to overcome the conflicts, it makes it even more exciting because you weren't really sure how they could possibly get over that. But I love these books. The friendships in it, the family, and then also the love interest. The men in this little interconnected standalone are amazing. I think that they are so sweet. This one happens to be a single dad, and love that. So this was an amazing book. I would definitely recommend picking it up. 5 stars for me. The next book that I read was Shipped by Angie Hockman, and this was essentially a workplace rivals to lovers. This is about a very type A girl who wants to get to the top of the food chain, the C-suite, and to do that she has to compete against this guy who she really does not like because she thinks that he took credit for one of her ideas. So they are both sent on this cruise to the Galapagos Islands to come up with some marketing strategy that will promote the company. During this trip, they are able to hang out, get to know each other a little bit better. The best part about this book for me was the setting. Since it was the Galapagos Islands, I was at the beach when I was reading this. It was very summery, so I really enjoyed that. I don't really enjoy the workplace rivals to lovers trope very much. I just think most of the time it's a miscommunication and there's no real reason to dislike somebody nearly as much instead of just talking to them and addressing it. So I struggle with that a little bit, but there is a on honeymooners kind of vibe to it where they are on this amazing cruise and then they have to come back to reality, and that's when the real conflicts set in because you can be great on vacation, but it's really about how is this vacation going to impact you once you get back to the real world. So I like that aspect a lot, but I gave this a 3 stars. It was a fine book, just not the best book. Next, I finished Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I had received this as a NetGalley advanced reader copy and was trying to read this before it came out, but it was a book of the month book, so I'm sure everybody's seen it by now. But this story essentially follows a mid-20s female who is very excited because she's just been accepted to go into this portrait contest, which is huge for her in this industry because she hasn't really had a break yet. She dropped her major in medicine and chose to pursue art. So that came with a lot of conflict from her dad, but she really wants to make it in portraits. However, right before the portrait contest, she comes into an accident, and the accident results in a surgery that results in her having facial blindness. And because she has facial blindness, she cannot create a portrait. It is very challenging because she can see aspects of the face but can't really place it, can't see people. She has to rely on other factors such as their voice, their scent, just other identifying objects. The whole story follows her trying to make this portrait for this portrait contest to try to prove herself. Because for the most part, she is emotionally unstable, I would say, as a result of having this facial blindness. It happens very quickly within the book, so it just doesn't ever seem like she gets to a good place with it in the book, and I didn't really enjoy that. It felt like her emotions were all over the place. She wasn't really able to open up to people, and I didn't necessarily really understand why. It would have just been very easy to be upfront about it, but she just kind of kept it hidden, which resulted in her doing some things that just didn't need to necessarily happen. A lot of the book's conflicts just could have been resolved with simple communication. So it really did not work for me. The story itself just didn't work for me. I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was such a unique concept, but it just fell flat. So I gave this book 2 stars, and with that, I know I've heard a lot of good reviews about it, so just if it sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. Next, I finished Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo and gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I listened to this 50% as an audiobook and 50% I read the physical copy. And I'm not going to give too much of a description on this because it is kind of the end place of Ninth House. It's the second in the Alex Stern series. So it picks up exactly where Ninth House leaves off, with this conflict that's occurred and how they basically go about resolving it for the entire book. I enjoyed Ninth House more. I felt like the plot was a lot better. This one is really good. It's still 4 out of 5 stars. It was such a journey, but there was just so much going on. The characters could not catch a break. I genuinely exhausted myself trying to read this book. I really liked it more when I was listening to the audiobook because, again, there was just so much going on that it was kind of hard to keep up with just reading it. It was personally just a lot for me, but it was very interesting. I liked seeing more of the character development within this book because you're not just meeting them, you're kind of watching them grow within their roles. And the whole traveling to hell thing is very cool. I really liked how she did the descent. Also, this is not a light read. There are definitely some trigger warnings, so make sure that you look those up before going into it. But all around, I'm really enjoying the Alex Stern series and am very much looking forward to the 3rd book because hopefully we'll get a little bit more of some romance in it. I have mixed thoughts about it because obviously we want 2 of the characters to get together, but I feel like with the plot, it doesn't necessarily make sense. There's just so much bigger things going on, but it would have to be like a subplot of romance. But those are my thoughts. 4 out of 5 stars, really enjoyable, would recommend the audiobooks. Next, I needed just a fast-paced read, so I picked up The Inmate by Frida McFadden on my Kindle and gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This story essentially follows a single mom who has left her hometown after a tragic night where she was almost unalived by who she thinks was her boyfriend at the time. She testified against him in court and what resulted in him being put in this maximum security prison. She is coming back because her parents have just passed away and she's going to take over their house, but the only job that she could get was being a nurse practitioner at this maximum security prison. And she knows that she's probably going to have to come into contact with the guy who she really loved at one point and is actually the father to her son, but he does not know that. So, very messy. Extremely, extremely messy. And I really enjoy Frida McFadden's writing. It is so fast-paced. The chapters are short. There's a lot of dialogue, which I appreciate. And something that she does really well is the plot twist, obviously, but then making you think one way and then having to think another. You're just kind of back and forth with the main female character in this book because she is also just back and forth. So you're really understanding why with all of the different facts that are presented to her throughout the story. My qualm is that the plot twist had no real, I feel like, breadcrumbs to lead you there. I mean, I could have never gotten there on my own. So that is definitely something I struggle with when I'm reading thrillers. I like to be able to go back and think, oh, like had I picked up on this, I would have been able to see this. Not the case in this book for me anyway, but it was still very entertaining. I read it super quickly and that's what I needed at the time. So still very entertaining. It's on Kindle Unlimited, 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I listened to Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center and gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This follows our main female character who is a firefighter in the Texas area, but something happens and her mom is sick, so she just transfers up to another firehouse up north. Unfortunately, this firehouse is not nearly as progressive as her current one, so she has to prove herself to the guys there and not fall in love with any of them. Naturally, that is going to be the case here. But her mother left her on her 16th birthday to go be with another man, and something also really tragically happens to her on her 16th birthday, which she kind of misplaces and puts on her mother as well. So, a lot to unpack, but I really enjoyed this female main character. I felt like she was very relatable. She was very strong-willed especially. Her actions make sense given what she has gone through in her life. It definitely revived Catherine Center's writing for me, because Hello Stranger, like I said, just did not work for me. I loved The Bodyguard. I gave that 5 stars. That was a perfect book for me. This gets 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I liked the romance. I liked the main character. Unfortunately, the firehouse setting just didn't work for me. This is a book about a woman who is a firefighter, so there is going to be a lot about firefighting. I knew that going in. I did enjoy it, but it just wasn't my favorite. So not a perfect book, still better than the average book for me though. So, and the audiobook was a really good way to consume this book as well. Next, I listened to Cersei by Madeline Miller and gave this 2 stars. This essentially follows the Witch of Aiaya, who has been exiled there because she is a witch and she has harmed some other immortals. And it essentially follows her over thousands of years that she's on this island as people wash up on her island and bring with them whatever adventure comes. My biggest qualm with this is that it happens over her entire life. So literally thousands of years, there are people washing up on her shore, bringing something with them, and it's just very cyclical. You don't really know what the height of the story is. It all just seems like waves. Normally there's like a crescendo, a peak, and then you kind of descend. No, it's just like rolling waves in this book because there are so many things that have to happen because she is alive for thousands of years. This made it kind of boring. There was no central plot point. This really is, I think, a character study. So if you really enjoy character-focused stories, this is definitely a good one. The writing is amazing. I think that Madeline Miller, does a great job with writing. I think it's beautiful, lyrical writing. It just doesn't make up for the fact that I am not interested in 1,000 years. And like, it's less than 400 pages, but it felt so long. And even listening to the audiobook, it felt so long. So I personally don't recommend this one. It is just a lot. The Goodreads ratings are really amazing on this. And I guess it has to be all people who really just love Greek mythology and Greek history, because otherwise I'm not sure what I'm missing, but it just did not do it for me. So 2 stars, probably wouldn't recommend. Next, I read The Whispers by Ashley Audrain and gave this 5 stars. This book, before I say anything else, is extremely triggering. There are a lot of heavy topics in it, so I would recommend looking those up before going into it. But if you are comfortable with them, you are in for an emotional but very understanding and I think important read. This book follows 4 women who are in different places of motherhood, and they all are at this cookout together within their neighborhood when they hear one of the moms really just explode in anger at her kid. That is the first point in this book. The same kid winds up in a hospital after falling out of the 3rd-story bedroom window. All of the women are kind of trying to support that one mom, but also have that scratch in the back of their brain, wondering how he fell out of this window. Again, this book, very triggering because it follows the women as they're in different stages of motherhood. So one wants to conceive but really cannot carry a child to term. Another mom gets the feeling that her husband is having an affair and she feels like she has no identity outside of being a mom. The 3rd woman, the main, I guess, kind of central character, really enjoys her corporate life more than she enjoys being a mother. And then the last woman has experienced the loss of her child. It kind of sounds like it would be, I guess, just heavy, and it is very heavy, but it is also very good. I would say that this is a suspenseful read, not really a thriller, but more than anything, I think it is just an amazing perspective on the female experience. I loved it. I think that it made me feel seen in different aspects, and I didn't even have to connect with the specific scenarios that the women were going through, because like with the writing style, that you could relate and that you could empathize with them and feel for them. I read The Push by Ashley Audrain last year, and it was just as uncomfortable and disturbing, and I think she just puts into words different feelings that most people don't say out loud, and I love that about her writing. It is very raw and emotional, and again, uncomfortable, but I think it makes people feel seen and understood as well. So I loved it. Personally, I think that it is so amazing to have stories like this, and would recommend picking it up if you are comfortable with the trigger warnings. Next, I picked up Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez and gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book. This book is the second in the interconnected standalone series, with the first being Part of Your World. And my favorite character in Part of Your World was Bree, and this is Bree's story. And I loved it. Bree has a lot going on. She's had a really bad year. Her little brother is in kidney failure. Her husband has been caught cheating on her for the last 2 years. And she really wants this position as the chief of emergency medicine. She thinks that she's about to get it because the current chief is about to retire. She goes into his office and he says basically that he's going to wait until people meet this new guy, Jacob, to see if people really like him, because he used to be the chief of emergency medicine at his old hospital. Naturally, this makes Bree even more upset because she's had so much going on and she was very excited about this position. I'm not Jacob's biggest fan. Jacob has anxiety and he is really struggling on his first day at this new hospital. Everything's different. He's also lost all the patients that he's had on this first day. He's had a really bad day. He transferred to this new hospital because his brother and his ex ended up getting together at his old hospital, so he wanted to distance himself from that. And so he comes to this new hospital, is having a terrible day, and then ends up getting run into by Bree because she's running to help a patient who happens to be her brother, and he just says all the wrong things. He is just not doing very well for himself, so eventually he stops trying with words and starts writing letters. It is so sweet. The letters in this book are amazing. I really enjoyed the mental health representation that Jacob had. Bree has kind of sworn off marriage, but she is really liking having Jacob as a friend. There is the fake dating trope, which was really good, but at the same time you just want to shake them because you want them to just know that it's real and not just to hold up the ruse that they are fake dating. And then I think at the end there was this one part where it was like their big conflict, and it seemed to only last for like 40 pages. Like, I thought the conflict was going to be them coming to the realization that they both had real feelings and not just fake dating. But no, there was another conflict, and it made sense after the author kind of explained why, but it was just kind of short. And I don't think it was completely necessary, but I think the result of the conflict was definitely worth it. I loved how Jacob addressed what was going on, and it was just perfect. Jacob is an amazing, amazing male character. I loved him. So this was a fantastic book. It was 5 stars for me. I would definitely recommend reading it. I didn't particularly like Part of Your World very much. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I would push through to get to this one. And then lastly, I ended the month with One for My Enemy by Olive E. Blake. And this is a witchy Romeo and Juliet retelling. Very interesting. It's set in New York. There is a family of basically just females and then a family of just males. And there are some... There's a feud between them. We understand why, but the results of the feud are obviously very disastrous, such as Romeo and Juliet. But it is very interesting what she does with this writing. First, it is beautiful. The writing is lyrical. I really enjoy Olive E. Blake's writing. Alone with You in the Ether was a 5-star read for me, so I went in with really high hopes. I love the sprinkle of fantasy that was the witches in here. I think that we could have done more with the magic system because it was very confusing how certain elements were able to happen. I wish there was just a little bit more explanation there, but otherwise very, very good. It's still kind of broken up into the scenes and acts. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was very interesting. It wasn't my favorite, I think. It kind of dragged through the middle a little bit, just kind of getting the background on everybody and what we're all working up to, and then again a little bit with the confusion about how some things were able to happen. But overall, a really entertaining story. I would recommend it if you enjoy Shakespearean kind of styled writing. It's decently consumable. It's a little bit tougher, so you need a little bit more brain power. Kind of commit to it, understand it, and just take the time to get through it. But it was definitely worth it. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read more of her writing. And those are the 10 books that I ended up reading in the month of July. It was such a good reading month. I had 3 5-star reads, which really does not happen often. So I had a great time with this. I would recommend checking most of these out except for Cersei. Definitely a good reading month. Let me know what you ended up reading this month, and like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more of these reading videos. So thanks everyone. Bye.